This episode contains descriptions and details that some listeners might find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. It's shortly after midnight in San Antonio, Texas in December of 1981. Inside the pathology lab on the third floor of Bexar County Medical Center, technician George Farinacci is settling in for the night shift. George is used to the quiet. He's worked this shift for more than a year now, and mostly he likes it. He's never been much for small talk, and working alone in the lab suits him. But tonight, something feels eerie. He knows what the problem is. He shouldn't have read the file. Usually, he just runs whatever test's been ordered, interprets the results, and writes it up. But tonight he arrives a little early and took the time to read up on the backstory of sample number 3463. 11-month-old Joshua Sawyer survived a house fire, but died in the hospital days later. Although the file doesn't explicitly state it, George knows how to read between the lines. Nobody can figure out exactly why this kid died. Sure, they know it was a heart attack, but what caused it? That's the head-scratcher, and that's why the attending ordered a blood test to check for drugs and toxins. George logs the sample, then feeds the test tube into the automated chemical analyzer. Moments later, a number appears on the display, blinking to indicate that an unusual result has been found. The display shows Dilantin, 55.5. George blinks. Dilantin's an anti-seizure medication, and the normal range for someone on it is between 10 and 20. He's never seen a number this high. It has to be a mistake. So he goes through the process to get a more accurate reading. He dilutes the sample by half, then recalibrates the machine and runs it again. This time, the number comes back even higher, 59.6. This is a toxic level of Dilantin, nearly triple what a child should ever receive. It's certainly more than enough to kill an already sick 11-month-old. George pulls up Joshua's chart and confirms that he was definitely prescribed Dilantin. So the medication itself isn't a mistake, but the dosage? It's the most serious screw-up he's ever seen in all of his years on the job. George types up the results, prints them out, and puts them into Joshua's medical file. Somebody will surely be fired for this, but that kind of thing's way above his pay grade. Little does George know, Joshua Sawyer's death was no mistake. It's part of a sinister pattern that's consumed the pediatric ICU over the past few months. More and more kids are dying on the unit in ways that defy logic. And the results George has just typed up are a vital piece of evidence, a clue that could prevent more deaths. But it's a clue that will go unnoticed inside that file for more than a year. And in that time, dozens more young lives will be claimed. From Airship, I'm Jeremy Schwartz, and this is American Criminal. In the fall of 1981, children started dying on the PICU at Bexar County Hospital in record numbers. Now, pediatric medicine can be unpredictable. Infant systems are fragile, and sometimes the ward just has a bad run of luck. But something about this felt different. A lot of the patients who were dying weren't that sick. In fact, some of them came in with pretty run-of-the-mill symptoms, only to spiral into sudden fatal hemorrhages or heart attacks. There was no rhyme or reason to the deaths, but there was one common denominator: Genene Jones. Behind her back, Genene's colleagues started calling her working hours the death shift. At first, it was a dark joke. After all, Genene basically never left the hospital, so she was bound to be there for more emergencies than the average nurse. But a few sharp-eyed members of staff soon realized that there was something much more sinister going on. The more attention they paid, the more convinced they became. Genene was doing something to these kids. They were right, but they couldn't prove it. And despite Genene's track record of bizarre, unprofessional behavior, she'd made herself indispensable to the right people. So her colleagues' concerns fell on deaf ears, and for months, the death shift continued. Genene snuffed out dozens of lives before they'd even begun, right under the noses of the people who could have intervened. And the closer she came to being found out, the more ruthless she became. This is episode 3 in our 4-part series about the crimes of Genene Jones, Angel of Death. It's an October evening in 1981 in San Antonio, Texas. Inside the pediatric ICU at Bexar County Hospital, the Flores family are going through a waking nightmare. Their youngest, 6-month-old Jose, was admitted a few days ago with a fever, vomiting, and dehydration. Although the Floreses were terrified, doctors had assured them that Jose should make a full recovery. But now, they're gathered around a tiny bed, looking at his limp body. 31-year-old Genene Jones picks up Jose and cradles him to her chest, her eyes full of tears. She's been his nurse throughout his time at the hospital, and she's impressed the family with her dedication. More than once, she's refused to leave Jose's side, even when her shift is over, lingering in his room while other medical staff tended to him. She was with him when he took a sudden turn for the worse this evening, and after a doctor delivered the devastating news of his death, Genene insisted on personally escorting the family to see Jose one last time. Jose's older brother Juan quietly asks if he can hold Jose. Genene looks at him with a sad smile and asks if he'd like to carry Jose down to the morgue. Juan hesitates, visibly nervous, but then nods. It's the last thing he can do for his brother. Genene hands Jose's tiny form over to Juan, and then beckons the family to follow her. As she leads them out into the hallway, everybody falls silent. It's a solemn procession. Juan at the front carrying Jose's body tightly in his arms, Genene beside him, tears rolling freely down her face, the rest of the family trailing behind them, their faces gray with shock. No one makes a sound, except for Genene. With every step, her crying gets more intense until she's openly sobbing. Anybody watching would think she was the one in mourning. Suddenly, Genene stops in her tracks, forcing the Floreses to do the same. She spins around, her face is strangely blank. It's like a mask. Then, she grabs Jose out of Juan's arms and starts walking quickly away. When Jose's father calls after her, she breaks into a run, sprinting as fast as she can down the hallway and out of sight. For a moment, the Flores family are too stunned to move, unable to believe what's just happened. Then, it sinks in. This woman has just stolen their baby's body. They dash after Genene, trying desperately to catch up with her, but the hospital's hallways are dark and labyrinthian. While Jose's father goes to get help, his mother and siblings sink down onto plastic chairs, trying to process the surreal horror of what's just happened. This bizarre incident changes the shape of everything that happened before it. That night, the Flores family's warm feelings towards Genene curdle into anger and fear. Suddenly, all the attention she's paid Jose is starting to look less like touching devotion and more like dangerous obsession. After the Floreses raised the alarm, it doesn't take long for doctors to track Genene down. Turns out she's taken Jose to the morgue herself. They find her sitting with the infant cradled in her arms, a vacant look in her eyes. It's only after a doctor takes the baby from her that Genene snaps out of it. When they ask her what she was thinking, she's defiant. She doesn't see what the problem is. She'd gotten Jose to the morgue, hadn't she? She doesn't explain what possessed her to snatch an infant's body away from his grieving family and seems totally oblivious to the pain she's inflicted. Of course, this is just the latest in a string of bizarre incidents involving Genene. By now, her colleagues on the PICU can't believe she's still working there. Between showing up to work drunk, making sloppy mistakes with medications, and re-traumatizing bereaved parents, surely she should have at least been suspended by now. She's unprofessional at best and incompetent at worst. Either way, her patients' lives could be at risk. All that's bad enough, but a few members of staff have even deeper concerns about Genene. They've noticed just how many infants have taken sudden, catastrophic turns for the worse while under her care, and they don't believe it's all coincidence or error. They think Genene's doing something to harm these kids on purpose. One of those people is 25-year-old registered nurse Susana Maldonado. She's had a bad feeling about Genene since the very first time they met. She was throwing her weight around, talking over other people, and had confidence that didn't match her actual skill level. After the first couple of infant deaths on Genene's watch, Susana started paying close attention. Over the past few weeks, she's been studying the hospital's data, recording the names of every patient who's died on the PICU since January. She's cross-referenced those names with Genene's notes and compiled a list of all the deaths that have occurred on Genene's watch. It's a lot. Like a lot. A disproportionate number by any measure. And now she's ready to do something about it. One morning after finishing her shift, Susana takes a deep breath and knocks on the door of Pat Belko's office. She's nervous, and she has good reason to be. She's never had the sense that Pat likes her much, where Genene is clearly a favorite. And sure enough, when Susana explains why she's there, Pat's dismissive. She's aware Genene can rub people the wrong way, she says, but she's one of the hardest workers they have. She also tells Susana that she should keep her eyes on her own work, essentially telling her to mind her own business. Finally, she reminds her that allegations like this shouldn't be made lightly. Susana was expecting this reaction, and she's not deterred. In fact, she's come armed with evidence, pages of it. Once Pat looks through the records, she knows she can't brush this off any longer. She takes the information to the new medical director of the PICU, Dr. Jim Robotham. Jim's hiring last year was a big deal for the hospital. He trained at one of the most prestigious medical schools in the country, Johns Hopkins, and he's a specialist in pediatric intensive care. But coming in to manage this understaffed, underfunded ward was a bit of a shock for this young, energetic doctor. So in his eyes, Genene Jones is a godsend, a smart nurse who's willing to put in the extra work to help the PICU run smoothly. He's so confident in Genene's skills that he's been encouraging her to go back to school to qualify as a registered nurse. When other staff members have raised concerns about Genene's false alarms and general habit of crying wolf, Jim's usually on Genene's side. To him, there's no such thing as being too cautious when you're dealing with critically ill infants. With that very same level of caution in mind, Jim has to take Susana's suspicions seriously. He can't ignore months' worth of cold, hard data. And as he looks through the documents, he begins to wonder if he's made a terrible mistake. He can see that Pat's unnerved too, and that says a lot. He knows how highly she thinks of Genene. The two of them agree. There will have to be an investigation. Jim takes Susana's information to his own boss, the chairman of the pediatrics department. His expectation is that some higher authority will carry out a full investigation to get to the bottom of what's going on. But to his surprise, the higher-ups don't seem interested. The message he gets back is that the hospital won't be putting any resources into this matter. If Jim wants an investigation into his staff, he'll have to do it himself. So that's what Jim does. Over the next few weeks, he digs into every single one of the infant deaths that have happened under Genene's care, looking for patterns. A handful of the cases stand out. 6-month-old Jose Flores was admitted with a fever, vomiting, diarrhea, and later seizures. His condition was serious but stable. But then, Genene took him down to the basement for a brain scan. During that scan, he'd gone into cardiac arrest and started bleeding uncontrollably. Doctors had tried for more than an hour to save him as blood pooled underneath his helpless body. Jose's was a tragic, seemingly inexplicable death that was only punctuated by Genene's bizarre behavior after the fact. She'd snatched Jose's body and run away from his family to hide in the morgue. As Jim reads through the records, he realizes that another infant died a bizarrely similar death just a few weeks before. 4-month-old Paul Villarreal was on the PICU to recover from an elective surgery on his skull. It was a straightforward case, and his risk of complications was low. Yet, within a day of his procedure, he deteriorated, suffered a seizure, and began bleeding profusely from every orifice. After his death, a resident noted that it seemed like his body had completely lost its blood clotting mechanism. Jim feels a chill as he reads through the notes, not just because of how horrific the details are, but because the whole sequence of events feels wrong. There's an internal logic to medicine, a rhythm to the way things happen, even in pediatric intensive care. But these cases? There's no logic to them. Jim can only think of one explanation for sudden, uncontrolled bleeding in an infant with no clotting issues: an overdose of blood thinners. But neither Jose or Paul was prescribed blood thinners. So if that's the cause of their fatal bleeding, it couldn't have been a simple dosage error. No, if Jim's right, then these two infants were deliberately given a lethal dose of a drug they should not have had in their system. And that means that Genene Jones isn't the best nurse the PICU has. She's their worst nightmare. If you run a small business, you know there's nothing small about it. Every day there is a new decision to make, and even the smallest decisions can feel massive. Now, when those decisions begin to feel daunting, you want to know that you have the right platform and all the tools to be successful. Well, guess what? Shopify. Shopify's point-of-sale system is a unified command center for your retail business. It brings together in-store and online operations across up to 1,000 locations. Imagine being able to guarantee that shopping is always convenient. Endless aisles, ship to customer, buy online, pick up in store, all made simpler so customers can shop how they want and staff have the tools to close the sale every time. And let's face it, acquiring new customers is expensive. With Shopify POS, you can keep shoppers coming back with personalized experiences and first-party data that gives marketing teams a competitive edge. In fact, it's been proven. Based on a report from EY, businesses on Shopify POS see real results, like 22% better total cost of ownership and benefits equivalent to an 8.9% uplift in sales on average relative to the markets that surveyed. Get all the big stuff for your small business right with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/AmericanCriminal. Go to shopify.com/AmericanCriminal. Shopify.com/AmericanCriminal. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. Here's why you should say yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for $15 a month. Ditch overpriced wireless and their jaw-dropping monthly bills, their unexpected overages and hidden fees. Mint's plans start at just $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. I'll tell you what's great, because you can use your own phone, your own number, all your contacts and stuff like that. I have a friend who took his old phone, took it to Mint Mobile, they resurrected it, brought it back to life, and that phone now is in the hands of his child. So that kid's got an old phone, and it works great, and thank you, Mint Mobile. Are you ready to say yes to saying no? Then make the switch at mintmobile.com/American Criminal. That's mintmobile.com/American Criminal. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. It's early in the evening on December 12, 1981. On the PICU at Bexar County Hospital, 20-year-old Connie Weeks is sipping a lukewarm cup of coffee from the vending machine. She's barely slept in days, ever since her family's rented house burned to the ground. They all got out, but her 11-month-old son Joshua suffered such severe smoke inhalation that he stopped breathing. Days later, he's still fighting for his life. Connie feels a gentle hand on her shoulder. She looks up to see Genene Jones. She smiles in relief. Genene has been her one constant during this whole nightmare. Other medical staff have come and gone so fast that she can barely keep track, but Genene has been at Joshua's side almost every moment. And while she's a kind person, Genene doesn't mince words. She doesn't sugarcoat anything. That makes Connie trust her. Genene tells Connie that she should go home and get some rest. Joshua is stable for now, she says, and there's no reason for her to hang around all night. Connie hesitates. She knows it's superstitious, but she's convinced that the moment she leaves, something terrible will happen. But Genene reassures her that she'll keep an eye on Joshua. She'll contact her the second anything changes. Finally, Connie agrees. If nothing else, she could use a shower and a change of clothes. She leaves, thanking Genene on her way out. Genene watches Connie go, a placid smile fixed on her face. Then, still smiling, she moves into Joshua's room and closes the door behind her. Genene walks over to Joshua's bed and takes a syringe from the pocket of her scrubs. It contains Dilantin, an anti-seizure medication. Joshua's doctors prescribed it on his first night here, and it's Genene's responsibility to ensure that his dose is maintained. She disinfects the port on Joshua's IV fluid bag and then attaches the syringe, releasing the medication into his bloodstream. But she's not giving Joshua his prescribed dose. She's giving him 4 times that amount. And she's doing it intentionally. She looks down at Joshua, a serene expression on her face. He's pale and perfectly still. The sound of his breathing is artificially amplified by the ventilator tube in his throat. Those things can do terrible damage to an adult's windpipe, never mind a tiny child's. If he were conscious right now, he'd be in agony, Genene thinks. It's for the best that he never wakes up. After Genene injects Joshua with a lethal dose of Dilantin, it takes just a few minutes for the drug to overwhelm his tiny, stressed organs. The overdose triggers a disastrous chain reaction that soon stops his heart. Doctors are able to shock his heart back into a normal rhythm, but it only holds for 30 minutes. After that, he goes into another cardiac arrest. And this time, he doesn't come back. Dr. Jim Robotham arrives on the PICU just in time to see Joshua flatline. He's been taking the suspicions about Genene seriously, and he's getting plenty of support from his staff. But his superiors still aren't convinced. They want concrete evidence of any wrongdoing. Without that, they can't or won't do anything. Now, as tragic as Joshua's death is, Jim knows that it might be his best chance to get the proof the hospital needs. He approaches Patricia Alberti, one of the hospital nurses on duty, and quietly asks her to send a sample of Joshua's blood to the hospital lab. He wants them to run a full drug panel to check for any unusual or excessive medication. Then he lets Patricia in on what's going on. He asks her to page him as soon as any child on the PICU goes into cardiac arrest and to keep an eye on Genene. Jim's intention is to keep his surveillance of Genene on the down low, but she figures out what's going on pretty quick. And surprise, she doesn't take it well. She's always seen Jim as one of her biggest allies at the hospital, and she can't understand why he's suddenly turned against her. But if he's going to try and bring her down, then she's happy to drag his name through the mud too. She starts complaining to colleagues that Jim's got it out for her, all because she's smarter than he is. She tells people that she's had a bad feeling about little Joshua Sawyer from the start, and when she tried to warn Jim, he just brushed her off. Now he's scared that he'll get in trouble for his mistake and is trying to paint her as the villain to save himself. Then Genene discovers that Jim's ordered a toxicology screen on another of her patients, and she loses it. She confronts him in the middle of his shift and in front of other colleagues and asks him, "Do you really think I'm doing something to these kids?" When he tells her that he honestly doesn't know, her demeanor changes. Her face hardens and her voice gets venomous. She tells him that working on the PICU is her life, and if he tries to take it from her, she'll come forward with what she knows. Apparently, she's been keeping this little black book with the names of every patient who's died on the unit over the past 3 years, along with the names of the doctors responsible for each. It could look very bad for a lot of people if that information becomes public. Jim's not going to take that kind of threat lying down. Furious, he goes straight to his superiors and tells them that Genene Jones just tried to blackmail him. He wants her fired straight up. But it's not that simple. Jim's bosses follow up with Genene to hear her side of the story, and she downplays the whole thing. She claims she was just upset and that she made up the little black book to get Jim to leave her alone. Once again, she plays the victim perfectly. She comes off as a hard-working, downtrodden nurse who's been unfairly targeted by an obsessive doctor. In the end, the hospital chairman tells Jim that his fixation on Genene is unjustified. And more to the point, it could open the hospital up to a lawsuit if she decides to retaliate. But Jim won't be swayed. He insists that he's going to keep monitoring Genene until he finds something. Hearing that, the chairman has to decide what he's willing to risk. Either this Genene Jones is responsible for these patient deaths, or she's not. Either way, anything that even smells like an accusation, and she could sue the hospital. So the chairman makes his choice. He puts Jim on temporary leave for a month. He frames this as a good thing. Jim's under too much pressure and needs a break. But the implication is clear. You need to back down. In Jim's absence, the result from Joshua Sawyer's blood tests finally come back. The lab printout shows a sky-high level of dilantin, more than triple the expected range, and well past a lethal dose for a child. But without Jim around to follow up, the page just gets folded into Joshua's medical file, where it sits unnoticed. Throughout the rest of December, 4 more infants die under Genene's care. In every case, she forms a bond with the child's parents and pays doting attention to the patient before engineering their death. After 2-year-old Doralia Rios dies from cardiac arrest, Genene writes a brief eulogy in her notes for that evening's shift. She calls Doralia a legend in her own time and signs off with an effusive, "Merry Xmas, Dora, I love you." 2 days after Christmas, 4-week-old Rolando Santos is admitted with pneumonia. He's one of the tiniest, most fragile babies the staff has ever seen, and it's harrowing to watch him fighting for every breath. He's placed on a respirator and given antibiotics, and within days there's a flicker of hope. Rolando seems to be stabilizing. By New Year's Day, he's breathing well enough on his own that doctors consider removing his respirator. But then, without warning, catastrophe strikes. Rolando's blood pressure nosedives and he goes into a seizure. On January 3rd, he starts bleeding uncontrollably. His doctors diagnose him with disseminated intravascular coagulation, or DIC, a rare condition where an infection torpedoes the body's clotting mechanism. No one suspects he's actually being overdosed on blood thinners. Still, with careful, hard work, they manage to get him stabilized over the next few days, a period when Genene happens to be on vacation. When Genene returns to the ward on January 6th, she immediately takes over Rolando's case. She tells anyone who will listen that she knew Rolando's condition was much worse than doctors said, but as usual, nobody listened to her. One night, she loudly announces that the doctors on his case are screwing up and putting Rolando's life in danger. The ward is especially short-staffed after the Christmas break, so there's nobody to keep an eye on Genene. Nobody to notice when she slips into Rolando's darkened room and injects a huge dose of blood thinners into his IV bag. Rolando's blood pressure crashes and he goes into another cardiac arrest within moments. But Genene's miscalculated. This tiny child is more resilient than she expected. Doctors managed to get Rolando's heart started again and stabilize him with drugs. He pulls through. It seems like a miracle. But the sudden, unexplained downturn has caught the attention of the attending physician, Dr. Kenneth Copeland. Kenneth is a pediatric epidemiologist, an expert in the pattern and progression of disease. He's new to the PICU, so he doesn't know any of the ward's history, nor the suspicions around Genene. But he doesn't need to. The moment he reviews Rolando's charts, he knows something is wrong. This child's presentation makes no sense to him at all, so he sends a sample of Rolando's blood to the lab. Sure enough, the results prove that Rolando doesn't have DIC or any other condition that could affect his body's ability to clot. What the test does show is sky-high levels of heparin, a medication that has no business being anywhere near this baby. Kenneth scans the readout over and over again, trying to make sense of what he's seeing, trying to come up with a less horrifying explanation. But he can't deny it. There's a killer on the PICU.
With new, gentler scented Clorox disinfecting wipes, clean finally smells as good as it feels on everything from lamps to ceiling fans. Even on your kid's toy shark. Oh, ouch. Clorox disinfecting wipes, now available in crisp lemon. Find it on Amazon. Clorox, clean feels good.
This episode is brought to you by eBay. Buying parts for your car? You'll know that will it work feeling. But on eBay, buying parts is different. eBay's free returns means if it doesn't fit, or if it isn't what you expected, you just print a label, drop it off, and get your refund fast. No haggling, no stress, and at least 30 days to return any eligible item. Millions of parts, free returns. eBay. Things people love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
It's January 11th, 1982, in the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit at Bexar County Hospital. It's only mid-afternoon, but it's been one of the longest days of Dr. Kenneth Copeland's career. And it's not just because he started his morning rounds at 5 a.m. That's standard for an attending physician. He's wrung out from the last few days, which he spent trying to save the life of a baby who keeps mysteriously deteriorating. As 33-year-old Kenneth walks back onto the PICU, he freezes. 6 hours ago, he ordered that 1-month-old Rolando Santos be transferred out of here and onto the general pediatric floor. It was an unusual request. Rolando is still recovering from multiple near-fatal cardiac arrests, and critically ill infants belong here in intensive care. But Kenneth is convinced that somebody working on the PICU is actively sabotaging the child's chances of getting better. Hence, the urgent request to get him off this ward and onto another one. But Rolando is still here, and Kenneth is furious. Looking around, he asks why his order has been ignored. He actually shouts it as he strides across the foyer. A nurse stops him, protesting that Rolando is too sick to be moved. Frustrated, Kenneth snaps, "He's too sick not to be moved. I want him out of here now." Kenneth knows that time is of the essence. Genene Jones will arrive for the 3 to 11 p.m. shift, and he wants to make sure Rolando is well out of her reach. He spent the last few days discreetly talking to people on the ward, and he's pretty sure that she's the one responsible for the boy's present condition. Thing is, he can't prove that she's the one who gave him an overdose of heparin. And without proof, he has to be extremely careful. His bosses have made it clear that unless there's hard evidence that Genene's done something wrong, they're unable, or at least unwilling, to do anything. But Kenneth is damned if he's going to leave this baby in harm's way because the hospital is afraid of a lawsuit. As Kenneth watches, 2 nurses gently wheel Rolando out of his room and out of the PICU. They get him set up on the general pediatric ward 2 floors up. There, Kenneth arranges for Rolando to be carefully guarded. He also requests that a list be kept of everyone who goes into the boy's room. He doesn't have any names, but specifies that if anybody from the PICU shows up, he must personally be informed before they're allowed near the baby. During his time on the pediatric ward, Rolando makes a miraculous recovery. After 5 days, his blood pressure is stable. He's stopped bleeding, and his pneumonia has improved enough that he can breathe without a respirator. On January 17th, he's discharged and his relieved parents take him home. Dr. Kenneth Copeland feels vindicated. And with Dr. Jim Robotham finally back from his forced leave of absence, they're both determined. They won't let the hospital sweep this episode under the rug. Sure, Rolando lived, but there's hard evidence that he was given a drug he shouldn't have been, in huge doses. Even if they can't prove that it was Genene or that she did it on purpose, they can prove that a child was nearly killed on the PICU in a manner that's eerily similar to other recent deaths. It's finally enough to make Kenneth and Jim's superiors pay attention. A few weeks after Rolando goes home, a team of external specialists is enlisted to investigate the PICU. When Genene finds out, she throws a tantrum. She writes a long letter to head nurse Pat Belko complaining that she's being persecuted and threatening to quit. But then she abruptly changes her tune. Suddenly, she starts telling anybody who'll listen that she welcomes the investigation. Maybe now somebody will finally listen to her when she explains how badly doctors on the ward are screwing up. They're getting patients killed, she says. But Genene's big talk doesn't do anything to change the outcome of the investigation, and the committee's findings are damning. They conclude that the PICU has been mismanaged for years. They don't find any evidence that children have been deliberately harmed, but they determine that patients have been passively harmed thanks to a poor quality team deficient in skills and morale. The specialists make lots of recommendations for improvements. One of the first is that all of the licensed vocational nurses on the unit should be replaced with RNs, who have a higher qualification than LVNs. The argument is that critically ill infants are just too complex to be managed by nurses with only a year of training. Genene is livid about this. During a department meeting, she insists that the hospital is scapegoating LVNs to cover up the failings of doctors and more senior nurses. Eager to play the hero, she yells that they're doing all of this because they want her gone. So she volunteers to be the sacrificial lamb if it'll save the other nurses' jobs. But nothing Genene says or does makes a difference. Things have to change at the PICU. So the LVNs are offered transfers to other wards within the hospital. Hearing this, Genene requests to be moved into pediatrics and flips out when she's told there aren't any positions available there. She quits right there and then. Taking care of sick children is her calling, she insists, and she's not about to give it up now. This was exactly the outcome the hospital had hoped for. By persuading Genene to leave willingly, they've minimized the odds that she can take legal action against them. And the good news keeps coming. Once Genene leaves Bexar County Hospital, the mysterious deaths on the PICU immediately stop. Infants still die, of course, it's inevitable at hospitals. But the pattern of sudden, seemingly random catastrophes is no more. Most of the staff are thrilled that Genene's gone, but there are a few people at the hospital who still have her back. To them, Genene's been scapegoated. Sure, she's kooky, maybe a little too passionate, kind of bossy, but all those things just made her an easy target. Somebody tailor-made to take the fall for the hospital's underfunding and staff shortages. One of Genene's defenders is young pediatrics resident Dr. Kathleen Holland. Kathleen is about to finish her third year and will be leaving Bexar County to start her own clinic in Kerrville, about 60 miles north of San Antonio. And she'll need someone by her side. Specifically, she's got to find a nurse. And there's only one person she has in mind for the job. Genene Jones is one of the most dedicated, capable nurses Kathleen knows. She'll be perfect. Still, when she calls to offer Genene the job, Kathleen's almost apologetic about it. The work won't be as exciting as on the PICU, the patients won't be as complex, and she knows that Genene thrives on a challenge. But Genene accepts the position without hesitation. Kathleen's relieved. She's grateful to be heading into this new chapter with a capable woman by her side. As for Genene, well, she's grateful too, but for an entirely different reason. For months now, she's been quietly getting away with murder, and it's a rush unlike anything she's felt before. It's not just about being at the center of the drama, although she still loves that as much as ever. It's the feeling of holding a tiny, defenseless life in her hands, getting to decide exactly when to deliver a glimmer of hope and when to snatch it away. She loves being able to predict deaths that no one else sees coming, and then making them happen herself. She relishes those moments when she makes doctors feel powerless, and she'll do whatever it takes to keep hold of that power. From Airship, this is episode 3 in our series on the crimes of Genene Jones. On the next episode, Genene's luck finally runs out, and the full, staggering scale of her crimes is revealed. We use many different sources while preparing this episode. A few we can recommend are The Death Shift by Peter Elkin, Elkin's August 1983 article of the same name published in Texas Monthly, and an episode of the TV series Murder by Medic. This episode may contain reenactments or dramatized details, and while in some cases we can't know exactly what happened, all our dramatizations are based on historical research. American Criminal is a co-production of Airship and Evergreen Podcast. It's hosted, edited, and produced by me, Jeremy Schwartz. Audio editing and sound design by Sean Rule Hoffman. Music by Thrum. This episode is written and researched by Emma Dibdin. Managing producer Emily Burke. Executive producers are Joel Callan, William Simpson, and Lindsey Graham.
I'm Jake Halpern, host of Deep Cover, a show about people who lead double lives. We're presenting a special series from Australia. It's all about a family who was conned by a charming American.
When you marry someone, you feel like you really know them.
I was just gobsmacked as to what's going on here.
Does the name Leslie Manookian mean anything to you?
Oh, you bet. Never forget her.
Listen to Deep Cover Presents Snowball, wherever you get your podcasts.
It's one of Britain's most notorious crimes, the killing of a wealthy family at White House Farm. But I got a tip that the story of this famous case might be all wrong.
I know there's going to be a twist one day, a massive twist.
At every level of the criminal justice system, there's been a cover-up in this case.
I'm Heidi Blake. Blood Relatives is a new series from In the Dark and The New Yorker. Find it now in the In the Dark podcast feed.